Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We return now to my conversation with the award-winning author Walter Mosley. His honors include an O. Henry Award, a Grammy, and PEN America's Lifetime Achievement Award. The son of an African-American father from the South and a Jewish mother, Mosley talks about his upbringing.
My father's a black man from southern Louisiana. He lost his father when he was 8 years old. His mother died when he was 7. He was on his own from the age of 8, and lived a very difficult life. And even when life got better for him and he made it, it was still difficult. My mother is a Jew from New York, whose family came from Russia originally at the very beginning of the century. She was, very, political, very much of the left. They got married when, in the middle of the century, in 1950, I guess, and they got together then anyway. Got married later, but they had a very, tight life together, but informed by the insanities. They both worked in a school. My mother had been married to a very rich man and decided to leave him. And so when she left him, she got a job as a clerk in a school. My father was a janitor in the same school. They met. That was it. They were together.
That was history. And
yeah. It's tough. Much like my writing, it's very political, but it wasn't. It was just their lives. One of the interesting things you find about writing fiction is that any fiction you write has to be political. Otherwise, it goes into the realm of fantasy. So, like if you write about a woman in America in 1910, if you don't write that she can't really control her property, that she doesn't have any say over her children, that she can't vote, if you don't put that in it, then it's a fantasy. Like, well, how's her life informed? That's true about everybody. If you write about black people, you write about white men. I mean, it has to be political. A lot of people don't realize that, it seems.
You write in The Nation magazine about being black and Jewish. Where was it that you were asked to sum up your life in 5 words? Or was it 7? They
wanted me to talk about being Jewish, and kind of put that thing together, being black and Jewish. One of the funny things about being black and Jewish, people are saying, well, what does it feel like being both African American and Caucasian, white? And I go, no, I'm not white. I got a black father and a Jewish mother. There's no white in that, But people are actually thinking that features define race when they don't. History defines race, and a particular interpretation of history defines race, because we're all mixed race in America, but no one admits it for some reason.
You wrote black, Jew, both outsiders, even here.
Yeah. And that had a lot of meanings. Even here in America, even here at the 92nd Street Y, anywhere that you find yourself, that you're just kind of pressed out. But that's okay, because the outsider, like in 12 Steps, gets the ability to step back and take a look. And if you really look, you begin to understand things. Like, so when people ask me, they say, well, how come blacks and Jews don't get along? Why are they fighting? I said, I don't know about what you're saying. A woman asked me that on this radio once, and I went, I don't know what you're talking about, because I'm the product of the relationship between blacks and Jews.
One of your books, What Next? A memoir toward world peace.
Yeah. I wrote that, published that with Black Classic Press, Paul Coates. Wonderful guy.
Black Classic Press, Baltimore?
Yeah.
Talk about that for a minute before we talk about the book, the publishing of the book, and why you went with an independent black press.
Well, one of the things that, there's a lot of ways that one can complain about capitalism, but indeed, as long as you have printed money, you're going to have capitalism to one degree or another. So at some point or another, you have to worry about what your involvement is. When I publish a book with a mainstream press, they make, anywhere between 80 and 90% of the profit from that book, and then, and they share that with other, in quotes, white institutions. So, but if I gave it to a black press, the book being sold would make money for that press and in that community. And so I would be helping by working there. So every once in a while I publish a book with Paul at Black Classic Press, and it's kind of a wonderful thing. But I wrote the book, I wrote the book because, I was listening to America, lying. And they said, well, we're going to have a war on terrorism, and we're going to kill all terrorists. Okay, fine, look. What I said in the book, I said, I accept that. I accept it. You say you're going to kill all terrorists, fine. But then you have to kill all terrorists. You have to kill the people who are terrorists in the Middle East. You also have to kill the people who are terrorists at the Pentagon. You have to kill people who are your allies who are terrorists, like in Cuba. And you have to, kill other terrorists. Okay, if you agree to kill all terrorists, fine. But if it's just the people you don't like that you're killing, and then you're calling them terrorists, then I have a much bigger problem with that, because we're not doing what we're saying. And if we don't do what we say, there's no way for us to move forward. If we're lying about our actions, there's no way to move forward. If we recognize our actions, we might say, well, maybe we don't want to do that. Maybe we don't want to kill our terrorists in the Pentagon. So, well, then there must be another answer. So, it was just a thing. I was happy about that book because it came out the day we invaded Iraq, which was like, the second time. And I was very, very pleased about it. But, I couldn't get any traction because the argument actually made so much sense that nobody in Bush's White House even ever mentioned it.
You're also addressing it to the African-American community,
Absolutely.
the U.S. war on terror.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people understood it. A lot of African-Americans are in the Army, of course, and didn't understand it, but a lot did,
Talk about your father's experiences in World War II.
Well, I don't know. That's such a broad term. You don't want to make that any more specific. It's like, my father, he never wanted to go to the war. He didn't really feel that he was representative of America, and that even that he wasn't American. And one of the things that he thought, he told me, I said, Dad, were you afraid when you went to World War II, the biggest war in the history of the world? And he goes, no, not really. And I said, why not? He said, well, I thought it was the Germans against the Americans. And I said, well, it was. He said, yeah, but I didn't realize that I was an American. He said, the first day I ever truly realized that I was an American was when the Germans started shooting at me. And that realization wasn't just my father. It was all African Americans. And the idea of equality and liberation comes from that experience and talking to people who had that experience. I think that was my father's biggest thing with World War II.
And he served in a segregated unit.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, everybody served in a segregated unit except at the very, very end of that war. But another kind of like side story, which is like very interesting, he went over with like 30 guys. 25 of those guys came back. But everybody he was friends with in 5th Ward, Houston, Texas, were dead. Everybody had been killed.
When he came home.
Yeah, it was safer for my father in the middle of World War II than it was for him back home in Texas. Yeah.
We're talking to the writer Walter Mosley. I want to turn to a clip from the 1995 film Devil in a Blue Dress, which is based on your novel of the same name. The film stars Denzel Washington playing your notorious protagonist, private investigator Easy Rawlins. In this clip, a bar owner named Joppy introduces Rawlins to a man named Albright.
So here you need a job.
Oh, yeah, Doc. Easy, always trying to do better. He's one of the few colored men around here who own his own house. Shoot, he paying the mortgage every month, just like y'all folks.
Property owner, huh? These big companies don't give a damn, do they, Easy? Got out of that racket a long time ago. Look, if you do need a job, you drop by this address, 7 o'clock tonight. What kind of work you do? I do favors. I do favors for friends. Drop by.
That was a clip from Devil in a Blue Dress, where Easy Rawlins meets the man who introduces him to a world of crime and mystery. Elaborate on this.
Well, in that book, DeWitt Albright represents whiteness. And for Easy, this is two things. It's something that's very threatening and very dangerous, but also it's something that he has to accept and deal with to work his way out of trouble. Now, there's very specific troubles that he's having right then, but it's a larger thing. And in getting involved in that, he begins to understand his equality. And this is really a very much an African-American experience in the middle of the 20th century. People beginning slowly to understand and to be able to express who they are in a world that doesn't want to accept them. For Easy, it's crime and people getting killed and people avoiding who they are, people being kidnapped, all kinds of stuff. But But you could break it down to, like, when my father was a janitor at a school in Los Angeles, they got a nickel an hour raise at one point.
You grew up in Watts.
I grew up in Watts, yeah. And the boss is a white guy and everybody else is black. The boss, the white guy, says, well, the board has decided to give you this raise, and this means that you have to work harder because they're paying you better. And my father says, excuse me, sir. They gave me a raise because that's what I'm worth. They gave me a raise because my labor is worth that to them. I don't have to work any harder. But this is a moment of real realization for him. And my father telling me the story, saying, you know, it's like I was courageous then because that man hated me from then on. You know, my ability to grow was limited by my expression of who I was. But my expression of who I was opened doors that accepting it never would.
Talk about the 50s in Los Angeles. It's also the setting for the film.
Well, LA is such an interesting place because, you know, when in the 50s in LA, from a racial point of view, there were only two races, white people and everybody else. You know, before the riots of the mid-60s, people of color identified with each other, at least in the West Coast where I was. And so... And because you had a city that was growing 100,000 people a year, every year from 1945 till the present, you're always building new highways, new sidewalks, new shopping centers, new houses. And you didn't have, like you had in the South and the East, the issue of, well, we're not growing that much, so we're only going to hire our white friends. They had to hire everybody. And so we were very much thrown together. The working class is very much thrown together and understands each other in ways that I don't think existed anywhere else in the country. You didn't have any other place until later Las Vegas growing that quickly. And so if like a white guy said, well, I don't want to work with these people, you just say, well, okay, fine, don't work. But we're hiring all the black people and the Mexicans that come to us because we need to build this road. Now we have an issue. And that made a kind of equality in a place that didn't exist anywhere else. And it's not that it was completely equal, but it gestured in that direction.
Talk about the 65 riots in L.A. What were you like?
I was 13. Yeah, I was 13 years old. Well, you know, there are a couple of stories to tell about it. Number one, I was in a group called the Afro-American Traveling Actors Association. And, you know, our play was playing on Santa Barbara, now Martin Luther King, that night. And so, you know, we went down to perform, but there was a riot going on, so nobody came to our play. And when we drove back, it was it was an interracial cast. You know, the white people all had to lie on the floor. You know, and I was a little kid watching the riots happen outside the window. I thought it was really a very interesting and worried time. I got home and my father was drinking and almost crying. And I said, Dad, what's wrong? He said, you know, the people are out there. They're fighting. They're shooting. They're burning places down. And he says, Walter, I want to be with them because I understand that rage, but I can't go because I know it's wrong. You know, the individual actions are wrong. You know, my feelings from the riots were so strong after that because, you know, what you did was you saw a group of angry people who actually changed all of America in one action. You know, like before that day, and in a couple of other places, before that day, everybody thought that the civil rights movement was a peaceful, nonviolent, marching, getting beaten and bitten movement, you know. And then the question comes out from after that. He says, well, these people are very angry. How many black people feel like that? He goes, 99 out of 100 black people feel like that. And the last 1% is really angry, you know. And so there was and again, you know, like so much political and social change comes out of California. That was one of the big things that came out of California.
What was your mother's reaction to the riots?
You know, my mother just accepted it. She was worried, you know, that, you know, about our house, about the neighborhood, about our friends in the neighborhood. But, you know, she's a communist from from New York. You know, she understood the moment of revolution and really didn't even talk about it very much. You know.
So now I want to move forward to the 1998 film Always Outnumbered, which is based on your novel, Always Outnumbered, Always Outgunned, and for which you actually wrote the screenplay.
Yeah.
I want to turn to another clip, this one from 1998, the film Always Outnumbered, which is based on Walter Mosley's novel, Always Outnumbered, Always Outgunned. He actually wrote the screenplay for this one, in addition to writing the book. In this scene, the main character, Socrates Fortlow, goes to a supermarket to apply for a job.
Can I help you?
I came for an application.
An application for what?
A job.
Oh. How old are you, sir?
That's against the law.
Huh?
Asking my age, you can't discriminate against color or sex or religion or infirmity or against age. That's the law.
I know that. I'm not discriminating. There's just no jobs. Why don't you come back in the fall when kids are all in school?
Hey, hold on. I came for an application.
I told you we
Don't
don't...
matter. You got to give me an application regardless. That's the law, too.
Wait here.
That's from Always Outnumbered, the film that's based on Always Outnumbered, Always Outgunned. And Walter Mosley wrote the screenplay for that. Tell us about Socrates.
You know, for me, it was an interesting thing. I was at a publisher, and they had sent me on a tour. They said, well, you're black and you're Jewish, so we're going to send you on a tour of Southern Jewish book festivals. I was like, great. That's wonderful, you know. I know I saw a lot of books. And so I went, but one thing happened. At every festival, I would run across three little old ladies. They were different, but they were the same. And they would always say, "But where's Easy's reading habits? Because Easy reads all this, all this stuff from all over the place." And I said, "Well, black people read." He said, "No, that's your Jewish side." It was the thing. It's like if you're going to be and I said, "But black people think, but they wouldn't listen because they know who my mother was." And so I decided I was going to write a black philosopher who these three ladies wouldn't appropriate. And, and I went through a lot of things. And, he's a guy. He's murdered some people. He's really a criminal. He got out of prison. And now he's trying to make a life for himself. And it's that guy's life which is the most interesting. I mean, my problem is a lot of people will talk about, the Obama, presidency and stuff like that. Once he got elected, that was fine with me. He didn't have to do anything else. But the thing that upsets me the most that isn't being done is, black men and women, women of color, and poor whites who are in prison, basically because they're uneducated and were able to work their way out of a life of crime. And here's a man who's actually working his way out, and then once he gets out, he doesn't leave. He starts to get together a group of people and say, well, let's ask questions. Let's figure out how this works, how our life works. Because if we don't figure that out, we're never going to be able to change.
Award-winning author Walter Mosley, his latest novel, All I Did Was Shoot My Man. His latest nonfiction book is 12 Steps to Political Revelation. When we come back, we'll talk about one of his biggest fans, former President Bill Clinton. Stay with us.